स्लाइड पनि शेयर भइरहेछ है
Yes, ma'am.
So from the last class we have been studying about spatial senses. Okay, spatial senses ma you have studied about the sense of smell and sense of taste taken by Dr. Rajesh Prajapati. Okay, so today I am going to talk the special senses. Special senses ma अब दुईटा बाँकी छ हाम्रो mainly eye and ear, sense of vision and sense of hearing. Okay, so first of all today I will continue with the sense of vision. Okay, first मा अलिकति हामी what is sense organ भन्ने कुरा पढिसक्यो होला. Okay, so sensation, it is the cortical perception of sensory stimulus. This you know. Threshold sensory stimulus लाई whenever it is perceived by your sensory cortex, you will have the sensation. सबै sensation, whether it be touch, pressure, vibration, अथवा visual sensation, smell sensation, जुनै पनि sensation को लागि you to have the feeling of that particular sensation, the particular sensory stimulus should reach the cortex. Okay, maybe the pathway are different. Okay, taste pathway छुट्टै छ, त्यसपछि visual pathway छुट्टै छ, hearing pathway छुट्टै छ, त्यसपछि we have dorsal column, medial lemniscus system. There are different pathways. Okay, next receptor भन्ने कुरा चाहिँ के हो भन्दाखेरि it is the specialized dendritic ending of afferent nerve. This you know. Okay, now what is sense organ? Sense organ, it is the sensory receptor. If it is surrounded by non-neural tissue, it forms the sense organ. For example, taste sensation तिम्रो पढ्यो है. Taste sensation मा tongue, it is the sense organ of taste. Gustation अथवा taste sensation को लागि sense organ भन्नाले हामी tongue बुझ्छौं. The tongue को सबै structure, it is not responsible for the sensation of taste. Taste buds, they are receptor. Okay, taste buds सँगै त्यहाँ अरु कुराहरु पनि छ नि, skeletal muscle छ, tongue को muscle हरु छ. These all are forming the sense organ. त्यस्तै आँखामा हेर्ने हो भने rods and cones, they are receptors present in the eye. Okay, rods and cones, they are the receptors present in the eye. आँखामा rods and cones बाहेक अरु structure पनि त छ नि, sclera छ, lens छ, okay, choroid छ. There are different structures. These all structures which are non-neural tissue plus rods and cones, it is forming the eye, which is the sense organ. Okay, now sense organ haru we have eye, ear, nose, tongue and skin. Okay, so today we are going to study about the eye. Okay, which is very very vital for us. हाम्रो लागि धेरै important कुरा हो है eye. So eye, it is the sense organ of vision. And what is the function of eye? The eye gathers the information about the environment, but a light will enter into eye and eye will gather the information about the environment, कस्तो particular environment छ. And then the brain will interpret this information to form an image of what appears within the field of vision. आँखा मात्र भएर भएन, आँखा सँगसँगै your visual cortex should interpret what is the image being formed. Okay, so you can compare your eye with the camera. Okay, camera जस्तै हो, with the cornea of the eye acting as the lens. Okay, त्यस्तै pupillary diameter functioning as the aperture of the camera, and the retina, it is serving as the film of the camera. However, the eye, it is far more sophisticated than even the most expensive camera. The most expensive camera ले जति राम्रो इमेज बनाउँछ त्यो भन्दा धेरै राम्रो इमेज चाहिँ हाम्रो आईले बनाउँछ. Okay, यो धेरै कुरा इम्पोर्टेन्ट छैन. Now anatomy of eye. Have you studied this structure in anatomy? Anatomy मा आई भइसक्यो?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
No भन्ने ठिकै छ है. So we will study the structure of eyeball. This is the structure of eyeball. The eyeball, it consists of mainly 3 layers from outside to inside. बाहिरबाट भित्र जाने हो भने it consists of 3 layers. First of all, this white color layer देखिरहेछ है. This white color layer which is called sclera and it is the outermost layer. Sclera भन्दा भित्र चाहिँ के छ भन्दाखेरि this red color, अलिअलि red color को छ, which is vascular layer, blood vessel भएको layer, and it is called as choroid. Next, the innermost layer which is called as retina, it is nervous layer. Nervous layer means this layer contains nerve cell, Okay, so the structure of eyeball bhannu pardakeri first ma it consists of three layers from outside to inside: sclera, choroid, and retina. Now what is sclera bhandakeri? The white part of our eye is called as sclera. Okay, and through the sclera no light will pass. It is opaque in structure. So this white part of the eye is called as sclera, and no light will pass through the sclera. However, this sclera is modified anteriorly. Okay, anteriorly this sclera is modified to form the transparent structure which is called as cornea. Okay, sclera is anteriorly modified to form transparent structure called as cornea, and this cornea, transparent means light can easily pass through the cornea. Okay, so this is about the sclera. Next is the choroid layer. This choroid layer, it is the vascular layer which consists of blood vessel. So blood vessels it will provide nourishment to sclera, it will provide nourishment to retina and other structures. Okay, so the main function of choroid is to provide the nourishment. Now the final layer, which is the innermost layer, it is the nervous layer, the retina. And this retina, it is lining only 2/3 of the choroid, posterior 2/3 of the choroid. यहीसम्म मात्रै छ, अगाडि चाहिँ रेटिना छैन. Posterior 2/3 of the choroid, it is lined by nervous layer which is called as retina. Okay, this is the retina. Now this retina, it consists of rods and cones which are photoreceptor. त्यस्तै अरु nervous structureहरु पनि सबै रेटिनामा छ, and in the retina image is formed by the eye. आँखाले बनाउने image चाहिँ it is formed in the retina. Okay, so in this retina layer there is one depressed portion just above the this portion. Okay, this is the posterior pole, this is the anterior pole. Okay, यो posterior pole को अलिकति माथि चाहिँ this portion is the area through which optic nerve will exit. Optic nerve बाहिर निस्किन्छ, त्यसपछि blood vessels will enter. So this point, it do not contain rods and cones, and this point is called as optic disc, or it is also called as blind spot. Okay, next यो blind spot भन्दा अलिकति माथि चाहिँ depressed yellow portion हुन्छ, देखिरहेछ होला है. This depressed yellow portion is called as macula, and in the center of macula there is fovea centralis, and in this fovea centralis there is maximum amount of cones. Okay, fovea centralis only contains cones, it do not contain rods. Rods and cones, they are the photoreceptors present in the retina. Retina मा हुने photoreceptor, rods and cones. त्यो मध्ये पनि जुन fovea centralis छ, fovea centralis मा only cones are present, rods are absent in fovea centralis. Next, this point which is just above the posterior pole of the eye, it is called as optic disc. Optic disc बाट चाहिँ optic nerve will exit. Okay, and blood vessels will enter. Now this optic disc, it do not contain rods and cones, so no image will be formed in optic disc. Therefore this optic disc is also called as blind spot. यहाँसम्म बुझेछ? यहाँसम्म बुझेको छ कि छैन?
बुझेँ म्याम.
Now this is the choroid layer which is the vascular layer. Okay, choroid layer मा चाहिँ अगाडि this is forming the structure called as ciliary body. This ciliary body, it consists of two types of muscle. One is called as circular muscle and next is longitudinal muscle. And to the ciliary body, the lens is suspended by attaching to the ciliary body. Ciliary body मा चाहिँ ciliary body बाट suspensory ligament आउँछ. Okay, ciliary body बाट suspensonular fibers of suspensory ligament, and to the suspensory ligament there is attachment of the lens. So lens is suspended by suspensory ligament, and which is attached to the ciliary body. Ciliary body, it consists of two types of muscle. One is circular muscle and next is longitudinal muscle. Now circular muscle र longitudinal muscle को contraction relaxation हुँदाखेरि lens चाहिँ flat हुने कि मोर कन्भेक्स हुने भन्ने कुरा चाहिँ डिटरमाइन गर्छ लेन्स मोर फ्ल्याट हुने कि मोर कन्भेक्स हुने लेन्स अझै बल्ज हुने हो कि अझै बाइकन्भेक्स हुने हो कि अथवा फ्ल्याट हुने भन्ने कुरा चाहिँ इट इज डिटरमाइन्ड बाइ द कन्ट्र्याक्सन एन्ड रिल्याक्सेसन अफ मसल्स that is in the ciliary body. About this we will study in accommodation. कसरी चाहिँ लेन्स बल्ज हुन्छ भन्ने कुरा है नेक्स्ट ciliary body भन्दा अगाडि this portion is called as iris of the eye. This portion is iris of the eye which is the colored portion of the eye. Okay, this is the iris of the eye which is the colored portion of the eye. And यो आइरिस को यहाँ बिचमा के छ भन्दाखेरि पाल छ होल छ के दिस होल or this central aperture of the iris diaphragm is called as pupil. Okay, now pupil भनेको के हो भन्दाखेरि it is not the particular structure. Pupil, it is not the particular structure. It is simply the central aperture of iris diaphragm. Okay, iris diaphragm को बिचको जुन होल छ iris diaphragm को बिचको जुन पाल छ त्यसलाई नै हामी के भन्छौं भन्दाखेरि we call it pupil. So light will pass through cornea then through the pupil to the lens. Okay, light will not pass through the iris. Iris बाट pass हुने हैन कि cornea, it is transparent structure, so light will pass through cornea then through the pupil and it will strike on the lens. Okay, ल यहाँसम्म क्लियर भयो यहाँसम्म क्लियर छ ल भेरी गुड ल भेरी गुड सो यो लेन्स भन्दा अगाडि एउटा कम्पार्टमेन्ट छ लेन्स भन्दा पछाडी एउटा कम्पार्टमेन्ट छ द लेन्स डिवाइड्स द आइबल इन्टु टु कम्पार्टमेन्ट एउटा एन्टेरियर एउटा अगाडि कम्पार्टमेन्ट छ एउटा पछाडी कम्पार्टमेन्ट छ हो सो पछाडीको कम्पार्टमेन्टलाई चाहिँ हामी के भन्छौं भन्दाखेरि वी कल इट विट्रस च्याम्बर Okay, लेन्स भन्दा पछाडीको च्याम्बरलाई we call it vitreous chamber. लेन्स भन्दा अगाडिको कम्पार्टमेन्टलाई चाहिँ हामी के भन्छौं we call it aqueous chamber. This vitreous chamber, it is filled with jelly-like substance which is called as vitreous humor and it prevents the bulging of the eyeball. यो eyeball को wall collapse हुनबाट पनि prevent गर्छ. Next, लेन्स भन्दा अगाडि के छ रे aqueous chamber. This aqueous chamber, it consists of the watery fluid which is secreted by ciliary body. Ciliary body secretes the watery fluid which is called as aqueous humor. This aqueous humor, it provides nourishment to the structure. Here iris भयो, lens भयो, sclera भयो. यो structure लाई चाहिँ के गर्छ भन्दाखेरि nourishment provide गर्छ. Okay, so aqueous chamber, it is filled with aqueous humor. Vitreous chamber, it is filled with vitreous humor. Now aqueous humor is continuously secreted by the ciliary body. Ciliary body बाट continuously secretion हुन्छ and it has to be absorbed. Okay, fluid body भयो भने pressure body हुन सक्छ. Therefore जति secretion भयो त्यति चाहिँ reabsorb पनि हुनु पर्यो and it is reabsorbed through the channel of sclem. Okay, channel of sclem which is present between the sclera and corneal junction. This is the sclera, this is cornea. यो sclera र cornea को बीचमा यहाँ junction हुन्छ. This is the junction. यो junction बाट चाहिँ यहाँबाट चाहिँ के हुन्छ भन्दाखेरि there is reabsorption of the aqueous humor. Okay, so in case aqueous humor reabsorption मा problem भयो तर secretion मजाले भइराछ भनेपछि there will be more amount of aqueous humor in the aqueous chamber. So aqueous chamber मा aqueous humor धेरै भएपछि के हुन्छ it exerts more pressure. That pressure is called as intraocular pressure. आँखामा आउने प्रेसरलाई हामी intraocular pressure भन्छौं. Okay, whenever the intraocular pressure is increased, that disease condition is called as glaucoma. Okay, whenever the aqueous humor को pressure increase हुन्छ that is called as glaucoma. ठीक छ ल is it clear about the structure of eyeball? eyeball को structure बुझ्यौ?
Yes, ma'am.
Just let us revise once. Okay, eye consists of 3 layers from outside to inside: sclera, choroid and retina. Sclera भनेको it is the outer protective layer of the eyeball which is the white part of the eye through which no light can pass. बुझिरहेछ and anteriorly it is modified to form the transparent structure which is called as cornea and through cornea light can enter. Okay, the lateral margin of the cornea is contiguous with the conjunctiva, a clear mucous membrane that covers the sclera. Okay, lateral margin it is contiguous with the conjunctiva. Now choroid just inside the sclera is the choroid layer. It is the vascular layer. Vascular layer means it provides oxygen and nutrients to the structure in the eye. Now next is the retina. Retina it is the lining of the posterior two-thirds of the choroid and it is the neural tissue containing photoreceptor. यहाँसम्म बुझेको ल यो स्ट्रक्चर बुझिन्छ है नाउ अरु स्ट्रक्चर आँखामा के हुन्छ भन्दाखेरि लेन्स हुन्छ लेन्स कस्तो लेन्स भन्दाखेरि बाइकन्भेक्स लेन्स इज प्रेजेन्ट के ट्रान्सपेरेन्ट स्ट्रक्चर व्हिच इज हेल्ड इन प्लेस by circular lens suspensory ligament and the zonule of suspensory ligament it is attached to ciliary body which contains circular muscle and longitudinal muscle fibers. Okay, next iris in front, it lies in front of the lens. It is pigmented and opaque. It is the colored portion of the eye. The iris, ciliary body and choroid लाई चाहिँ हामी collectively uvea भनेर भन्छौं. Now I forgot to tell this point. Iris को बीचको प्वाललाई के भन्छ रे we call it pupil. Pupil it is the central aperture of the iris diaphragm. Now this iris it contains two types of muscle. One is circular muscle fiber. Next is radial muscle fiber. Okay, ciliary body मा circular and longitudinal, iris मा चाहिँ circular and radial muscle fiber. Now whenever circular muscle contract, okay, look here this blue portion it is iris. Iris might consist of two types of muscle. One is circular muscle, next is radial muscle and this whole it is the pupil. Now the circular muscle contract भयो भने के हुन्छ भन्दाखेरि the size of the pupil will be decreased which we call as miosis. Okay, constriction of the pupil. Now whenever radial muscle contract भयो भने this pupil will dilate. Remember this point. Your point I remember गर्ने है. The iris contains circular muscle fiber that constrict the pupil and it consists of radial muscle fiber that dilate the pupil. Circular muscle contract भयो भने there is constriction of pupil. Radial muscle contract भयो भने there is dilation of the pupil. Is it clear? Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Very good. Now pupil it is the central aperture of the iris diaphragm and the diameter of pupil can be changed by contraction of the muscle of the iris. Iris को दुईटा muscle, circular muscle र radial muscle को contraction ले चाहिँ pupil को diameter can be varied. Okay, circular muscle contract भयो भने pupil सानो हुन्छ, radial muscle contract भयो भने pupil will dilate. Now variations in the diameter of pupil can produce up to 5-fold change in the amount of light reaching the retina. Now lens divides the eyeball into aqueous chamber in front of the lens and vitreous chamber behind the lens. You बुझ्यो है? Aqueous chamber can further be divided into anterior chamber and posterior chamber. यसमा हेरौँ है. So lens भन्दा पछाडी vitreous chamber, lens भन्दा अगाडि aqueous chamber. Now this aqueous chamber it can again be divided into anterior chamber and posterior chamber. Anterior chamber in front of iris, posterior chamber behind the iris. Iris भन्दा अगाडि, iris भन्दा पछाडी. Iris भन्दा अगाडिकोलाई हामी anterior chamber पनि भन्न सक्छौं भने iris भन्दा पछाडीकोलाई चाहिँ हामी posterior chamber भन्छौं. Aqueous chamber it is filled with aqueous humor which is the clear fluid produced by ciliary body and it nourishes cornea, lens and iris which I have told. Okay, now aqueous humor it is produced by the ciliary body and it is absorbed through a network of trabeculae into channel of sclem. It is the venous channel at the junction between iris and cornea. Okay, so यहाँ चाहिँ के छ त यहाँनिरको जंक्सनलाई चाहिँ हामी channel of sclem भन्छौं. Aqueous humor produce हुन्छ, produce भएपछि it is reabsorbed through the channel of sclem. Now, obstruction results in the rise of intraocular pressure. Obstruction results in the rise of intraocular pressure. If there is obstruction in the channel of sclem, it will cause more accumulation of aqueous humor in the aqueous chamber. Aqueous chamber ma pani धेरै हुन्छ, so it will exert more pressure, more intraocular pressure. Normal intraocular pressure is 10 to 20 millimeter of mercury. Now, whenever there is more intraocular pressure, it leads to damage of the retinal nerves. Retinal nerves damage bhayeपछि this condition is called as glaucoma. If it is not treated on time, it may lead to blindness. Okay, blind पनि हुन सक्छ. Now, vitreous humor, it is vitreous chamber. It is present behind the lens and it is filled with jelly-like substance called as vitreous humor. And the function of vitreous humor, it prevents the wall of eyeball from collapsing and it also maintains the intraocular pressure. So, यहाँसम्म चाहिँ हामी पढेको. यहाँसम्म केही नबुझेको छ? छ कि छैन? Clear, है. Now, the last layer, retina, where image is formed. This is the nervous layer. Oh, now this nervous layer again it consists of various layers. Retina ma pani धेरैवटा लेयरहरु छ. हेरौँ त. Pigmented epithelium, layer of rods and cones, external limiting layer, plexiform layer हो. धेरैवटा लेयरहरु छ. Now we are going to study about retina. Now जुन अघि yellow portion को retina छ, retina मा चाहिँ this much layer of the cells are present. Okay, हामीले अघि फर्स्ट मा भन्दाखेरि retina it consists of rods and cones भनेर भनेको हो किन? Retina it consists of rods and cones. Rods and cones बाहेक अरु neuronal cells हरु पनि present छ. The first layer, the outermost layer is called as pigmented epithelium, which is attached to the choroid. Choroid को नजिकैको layer लाई चाहिँ हामी pigmented epithelium भन्छौं. Okay. Now, pigmented epithelium भन्दा तलको layer चाहिँ layer of rods and cones, which are photoreceptor. R for rods, C for cones. Okay, layer of rods and cones. अब layer of rods and cones भन्दा अर्को nervous layer के छ भन्दाखेरि bipolar cell layer. Okay, आँखामा मात्रै bipolar cell हुन्छ भनेर पढेको होला कि bipolar cell को example मा it is present in the retina of the eye. This is the bipolar neuron. Bipolar किन? एउटा cell body छ, एउटा यतातिर छ, एउटा यतातिर छ. Branches हरु. So two branches means this bipolar neuron. And the next layer is ganglionic cell layer. So तीनटा neuronal cells हरु हुन्छ. एउटा layer of rods and cones, एउटा bipolar neuron layer, bipolar cell layer. Next is the ganglionic cell layer. अब कसरी differentiate गरेको छ layers हरुलाई भन्दाखेरि the first one is called as pigmented epithelium. Then layer of rods and cones. Layer of rods and cones ma pani this is called as outer nuclear layer. किनभने यहाँ nucleus सबै एकै ठाउँमा छ, so it is outer nuclear layer. Okay, then this is plexiform layer. Plexiform layer किन भनेको भन्दाखेरि rods and cones को cell र rods and cones र bipolar neuron को cell बीच चाहिँ यहाँ synapse भइराछ, so it is plexiform layer. बाहिरको भएकोले outer plexiform layer. Then this is bipolar cell layer. Bipolar cell को पनि सबै cell body हरु एकै ठाउँमा छ, so it is inner nuclear layer. This is outer nuclear layer and this is inner nuclear layer. Then again plexiform layer, so it is inner plexiform layer. Okay, inner plexiform layer. Then this is ganglionic cell layer. The axons of the ganglionic cell, it is forming the optic nerve which will exit from the optic disc. Okay, so के layer हुँदो रहेछ? Pigmented epithelium, outer nuclear layer भनेकै layer of rods and cones. बुझेको यो भनेको? छ कि छैन? Then external limiting layer, then outer plexiform layer, synapsing layer, inner nuclear layer contains bipolar neuron, mainly त्यसपछि horizontal cell र amacrine cell पनि हुन्छ. Then inner plexiform layer, ganglionic cell layer, then inner limiting membrane. So these are forming the layers of the retina. ल बुझेको हो कि न? Clear, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Pigmented layer, then outer nuclear layer of rods and cones, outer plexiform layer, inner nuclear layer of bipolar neuron, inner plexiform layer, ganglionic cell layer, then last मा चाहिँ के त optic nerve. खासमा optic nerve भनेको के हो? It is the first cranial nerve. कुन cranial nerve हो optic भनेको? It is the second cranial nerve, right? Olfactory, it is first cranial nerve. Optic, it is second cranial nerve. This second cranial nerve भनेकै के रहेछ भन्दाखेरि it is originated in the eye. आँखामा कसरी originate हुन्छ भन्दाखेरि the axons of the ganglionic cell. यो ganglionic cell को axons, it is forming the optic nerve. The bundle of axons of the ganglionic neuron, it is forming the optic nerve. The pigmented epithelium absorbs the light rays and preventing the reflection of rays back through the retina. Okay, such reflection would otherwise produce blurring of the visual image. Next, the optic nerve leaves the eye at a point 3 mm medial to and slightly above the posterior pole of the globe. This is called as optic disc. Optic disc yaad chhaina, where no rods and cones are present. Okay. This point is called as optic disc. This is optic disc through which optic nerve will exit. And this point is also called as optic disc. Optic disc लाई चाहिँ हामी blind spot पनि भन्छौं किनभने it does not contain any rods and cones. Rods and cones नहुने भएकोले यसलाई चाहिँ हामी blind spot पनि भन्छौं. Near the posterior pole of the eye, there is yellow spot called macula, and fovea, it is the center of macula, where only cones are present. Macula ma चाहिँ के, fovea ma चाहिँ के हुन्छ त? Only cones are present, and it is the region of high visual acuity. What is acuity? Acuity भनेको के हो? It is the region of high visual acuity, means more sharp image will be formed at the macula. के phobia मा चाहिँ के हुन्छ cones धेरै हुन्छ, so more sharp image will be formed at the phobia. Okay, भनेको बुझेको हो? High visual acuity means sharp vision at the phobia. Phobia मा image बन्यो भने there will be sharp vision. Fundus of the eye. Fundus of the eye भनेको चाहिँ it is the interior surface of the eye which is opposite to the lens. Lens को opposite को structure लाई चाहिँ हामी के भन्छौं भन्दाखेरि this is lens को opposite को यो structure लाई चाहिँ हामी के भन्छौं, we call it fundus, and it can be observed with the help of ophthalmoscope use गरेर चाहिँ you can visualize the fundus of the eye. So in interior surface of the eye opposite to the lens, and it includes the retina, optic disc, macula, fovea and posterior pole. यहाँ भएको arteries, arteriole veins in the superficial layers of the retina near its vitreous surface can be observed with the ophthalmoscope. Ophthalmoscope use गरेर चाहिँ you can visualize the fundus of the eye. Now let us talk about the photoreceptors. अघिदेखि भनेको photoreceptors are the receptors for vision. Receptors for vision, and they are present in the retina. हामीलाई यति थाहा छ. And there are two photoreceptors. One is rods and next is cone. Rods किन नाम दिएको भन्दाखेरि rod shape को भएकोले rods बन्यो, cone shape को भएकोले cone. Okay, look at this is cone shape. Ice cream को cone जस्तो छ, so it is cone shape. This is rod like structure, so it is rod shape. And the structure of rods and cones. Structure of rods and cones भन्नु पर्दाखेरि it consists of, this is the outer segment and this is the inner segment. Okay, outer segment and inner segment. This outer segment by यो inner segment मा चाहिँ के छ भन्दाखेरि inner segment it consists of nuclear region and it consists of synaptic terminal. This is the nuclear region and this is the synaptic terminal. Okay, so rod shape भएकोले rods, cone shape भएकोले हामी के भन्छौं, we call it cone. Now the outer segments of the rods and cones, they are modified cilia which comprise of regular stacks of flattened sacules or membranous discs. के हुन्छ भन्दाखेरि look at the cones. Cones मा के छ भन्दाखेरि the membrane of the cone it is folded to form cilia like structure. Okay, the membrane of the cone it is being folded. यसरी fold भइरहेछ. So it is sac like structure. So यिनीहरूलाई चाहिँ हामी sacules भनेर चाहिँ भन्छौं. त्यस्तै यो rods मा चाहिँ के हुन्छ भन्दाखेरि यस्तो saculeहरू चाहिँ detach भएर this disc like structure is formed. So this disc like structure like चाहिँ हामी discs भन्छौं भने cones मा चाहिँ sacules हुन्छ, rods मा चाहिँ discs हुन्छ. Okay, cones मा sacules हुन्छ, rods मा चाहिँ disc like structure. Now your sacules र cones को sacules र discs को काम के छ भन्दाखेरि they will store the photosensitive compound. Okay, the outer segments are modified cilia comprised of regular stacks of flattened sacules or membranous discs, and the inner segments are rich in mitochondria. Okay, inner segment it consists of nuclear region, synaptic terminal. There are lots of mitochondria in the inner segment, and these mitochondria they will produce a chemical substance which are photosensitive chemical compound. Now this photosensitive chemical compound they are synthesized in the inner segment, and they will travel through the from inner segment to the outer segment. Outer segment ma jन्छ, and they will be stored in the discs and sacs. Okay, rods ma bhayeko discs ma ra cones ma bhayeko sacs ma chai photosensitive compounds are stored. Okay, the inner segments are rich in mitochondria where there is synthesis of photosensitive compounds. The inner and outer segments are connected by ciliary stalk through which photosensitive compound travel from inner segment to the outer segment of rods and cones. यति कुरा बुझ्यौ? rods मा discs हुन्छ, cones मा sacs हुन्छ अथवा sacules हुन्छ. त्यो sacs मा र discs मा के हुन्छ भन्दाखेरि it consists of photosensitive compound which is synthesized by mitochondria in the inner segment of rods and cones. Now the rods are named for thin rod-like appearance of their outer segment. Okay, each rod contains a stack of disc membranes that are flattened, membrane-bound intracellular organelles that have detached from the outer membrane and are thus freely floating. However, cones generally have thick inner segments and conical outer segments, although their morphology varies from place to place in the retina. The sacules of the cones are formed by simply infoldings of the membrane of the outer segment. And the sacules and discs contain photosensitive compound that react to light, initiating action potential in the visual pathway. Our main target भनेकै के हो भन्दाखेरि optic nerve मा तिमीलाई action potential generate गर्नु पर्यो. Okay, action potential means it is the nerve impulse. Okay, nerve impulse कसरी generate हुन्छ भन्दाखेरि whenever light will strike on the photosensitive pigment, there will be bleaching of the photosensitive pigment. So photosensitive pigment bleach भएपछि there will be generation of action potential in the visual pathway. अब कसरी generate हुन्छ हेरौँ है. Now a distribution of rods and cones थोरै हेरौँ. So look here, this is the fovea centralis which we mark 0. This is right ma pani 20, left ma pani 20. Nasal retina and temporal retina. Now fovea centralis ma चाहिँ के हुन्छ रे? There is maximum number of cones. Blue means cones, red means rods. Okay. In fovea centralis there is maximum amount of cones and 0 amount of rods. No rods are present. त्यसपछि nasal hemiretina अथवा temporal hemiretina तिर जाँदाखेरि the number of cones is decreasing. Now this spot is blind spot. यो blind spot मा चाहिँ के हुन्छ भन्दाखेरि there is no rods and no cones. Cones पनि हुँदैन, rods पनि हुँदैन in the nasal hemiretina. Remember only this much. Now physiology of vision. अघि भनिसकेछु मैले whenever light strikes on the rods and cones, okay, they are photoreceptor. Photoreceptor भनेपछि receive light लाई receive गर्ने त के हो? It is the rods and cones. Light will pass through cornea, through the aqueous humor, then through the pupil, then through the lens, then through the vitreous humor, then it passes through the retina. Retina it strikes on the rods and cones. Rods and cones, it consists of photosensitive pigment. So whenever light strikes rods and cones, there is bleaching of photosensitive pigment present in rods and cones. Whenever there is bleaching of photosensitive pigments, then it will generate the nerve impulse. Now we are going to study how bleaching of the photosensitive pigment causes generation of the nerve impulse. ल त्योभन्दा अगाडि फर्स्टमा थोरै rods and cones को चाहिँ हामी functions पढौँ है. So rods and cones, both of them are photoreceptors. So they are the receptors for vision. Vision को लागि receptor. Now rods को चाहिँ काम के हो भन्दाखेरि these rods will be active during dim light vision. No light हैन है, dim light, मधुरो लाइटमा चाहिँ rods ले काम गर्छ. त्यसपछि bright light छ घाममा गएको छ भने at that time your cones are actively working. Then rods को अर्को काम चाहिँ peripheral vision. एउटा central vision हुन्छ which we call acuity of vision. Next is peripheral vision. तिमीले कहीँ हेरेको छ, फोकस गरेर कहाँ हेरेछ भन्दाखेरि अहिले तिमीले सपोज मोबाइलमा कन्सन्ट्रेट गरिरहेछ functions of rods and cones भन्ने सेन्टेन्स लाइनमा फोकस गरिरहेछ भने त्यहाँबाट जुन लाइट आइरहेछ it will stimulate your cones. Okay, that is central vision. Now function of rods and cones सँगसँगै तिम्रो ल्यापटपको वरिपरिको तिम्रो रुमको वरिपरिको पनि जुन देख्छौ that is peripheral vision. त्यो पेरिफेरीबाट जुन लाइट आइरहेछ it will stimulate your rods. Okay, so rods को दुईटा काम छ, एउटा dim light vision. dim light means मधुरो लाइटमा, अर्को चाहिँ peripheral vision. Next cones को काम चाहिँ हामी तीनटा भन्छौं A, B and C. It is the function of cones. Cones को काम के रहेछ A, B and C. A for acuity of vision. Acuity of vision means sharpness of vision. मैले भने function of rods and cones लाई तिमी हेरिरहेछौ भने function of rods and cones बाट जुन light आइरहेछ it will strike on your cones. Next B for bright light vision and C for color vision. Okay, C for color vision. A, B and C, it is the function of cones. Rods को दुईटा काम dim light vision, peripheral vision. Cones को चाहिँ के हो त acuity of vision, bright light vision and color vision. These are the three functions of the cones. The clear छ कि छैन? Clear छ कि छैन?
छ ma'am.
छ है. पक्कै छ?
Yes ma'am.
Now photosynthetic pigment. अघिदेखि हामीले photosensitive pigment, photosynthetic हैन यहाँ अलिकति मिस्टेक भएछ, photosensitive pigment. यहाँ हामीले photosensitive pigment हुन्छ rods and cones मा भन्यौ नि. Now what are photosensitive pigments? Now photosensitive pigments in rods and cones there are photosensitive pigment. The rods मा हुने photosensitive pigment लाई हामी rhodopsin भन्छौं, which will be bleached by dim light vision, dim light ले. And in cones there is photosensitive pigment called as iodopsin. This iodopsin चाहिँ कहिले bleach हुन्छ भन्दाखेरि bright light ले चाहिँ iodopsin will be bleached. Okay, so now let us study a structure of rhodopsin. Rhodopsin को structure कस्तो हुन्छ भन्दाखेरि this is the rod disc membrane. Rod disc membrane मा चाहिँ this is the structure of rhodopsin. Rhodopsin it consists of this retinal and G protein coupled receptor opsin. This opsin भनेको चाहिँ it is G protein coupled receptor. G protein coupled receptor को बीचमा चाहिँ के हुन्छ भन्दाखेरि retinal is present. This retinal it is synthesized from vitamin A. Okay, retinal it is synthesized from vitamin A. Therefore deficiency of vitamin A may cause blindness भनेर हामी पहिला पढेको हो. किनभने retinal of the rhodopsin is synthesized from vitamin A. Next opsin it is the G protein coupled receptor in rod cell membrane. Okay, so this is the structure of rhodopsin, retinal and opsin. नाउ डार्कमा छ नो लाइट जब कुनै पनि लाइट नै छैन भने रेटिनल भन्ने चाहिँ इट इज इन 11 सिस कन्फिगुरेसन whenever there is darkness no light ko time ma retinal it is in 11 cis configuration and now whenever dim light strikes the retinal dim light le retinal lai strike garepachi this retinal it is converted into all trans isomer okay 11 cis configuration bata light le strike गर्ने बित्तिकै it is converted into all trans isomer okay so all trans isomer ma convert hune bittikai it alters the configuration of opsin that means opsin is activated and this activated opsin now activates the G protein associated with it called as transducin okay this is rod ko dix membrane bhayo and this is rhodopsin this is retinal and this is opsin. This retinal, whenever no light is passing through the retinal, it is in 11 cis configuration. When light strikes, it is converted into all trans isomer. All trans isomer ma convert hune bittikai opsin is activated. Opsin activate hune bittikai it activates the G protein associated with it. So G protein activate bhayeपछि alpha GTP is separated. यो थाहा छ है alpha GTP is separated. Now alpha GTP it activates the enzyme membrane bound enzyme called as phosphodiesterase. Okay, this alpha GTP it activates the enzyme phosphodiesterase. Okay, activated G protein activates the cyclic GMP phosphodiesterase. Now cyclic GMP phosphodiesterase le ke garcha bhandakeri it causes hydrolysis of the cyclic GMP. Okay, GDP is replaced by GTP and alpha subunit gets separated and alpha GTP activates the cyclic GMP phosphodiesterase. Jalin phosphodiesterase it is the hydrolase enzyme, so it causes hydrolysis of the cyclic GMP. Cyclic GMP is now converted into GMP. Okay, so normally ke huncha bhandakeri normally whenever no light is striking darkness ma chai this sodium channel remains open. This sodium channel in the rod okay sodium channel in the rod it is cyclic GMP gated sodium channel. Cyclic GMP cha bhane sodium channel open huncha. Sodium channel open bhayepachi sodium will be influx. Sodium influx huncha. Okay, now whenever light strikes phosphodiesterase is activated. No cyclic GMP hydrolysis bhaएर सबै GMP बन्यो. So no cyclic GMP. Cyclic GMP नभएपछि this sodium channel will be closed. Sodium channel closed भएपछि no sodium will enter. No sodium enter means there is no process of depolarization. Okay, depolarization हुँदैन. यहाँ हेरौँ त के हुन्छ जब cyclic GMP present थियो sodium channel will open, sodium will enter, depolarization हुन्छ. Depolarization भएपछि rods बाट चाहिँ glutamate will be released. This glutamate भनेको के हो भन्दाखेरि it is the neurotransmitter which is inhibitory neurotransmitter. So this inhibitory neurotransmitter will inhibit the bipolar cell. You rods and cones भन्दा तल plexiform मा त के छ bipolar neuron छ. So bipolar neuron is inhibited. Now whenever light आउँछ light आएपछि के हुन्छ phosphodiesterase is activated which will break down the cyclic GMP. Cyclic GMP breakdown भएपछि के हुन्छ there is closure of cyclic GMP gated sodium channel. Sodium channel बन्द हुन्छ. So no influx of sodium into the cones. Cones मा चाहिँ sodium influx भएन. So नभएपछि there is hyperpolarizing receptor potential. No depolarizing. Depolarization भइरहेको छैन. अब hyperpolarization भयो. Hyperpolarization भएपछि only less release or no release of glutamate. Glutamate भनेको त inhibitory neurotransmitter हो. So glutamate नभएपछि bipolar neuron will be stimulated and there will be generation of the impulses. So अरु ठाउँमा भए न्यूरोट्रान्समिटर रिलीज हुन्थ्यो त्यसपछि इम्पल्स जेनेरेट हुन्थ्यो. यहाँ चाहिँ न्यूरोट्रान्समिटर रिलीज नहुँदाखेरि चाहिँ देयर इज generation of impulses in the bipolar neuron. In this way, there is generation of impulse in the rods and cones. Light will incident, light strike गर्छ. There will be structural change in the retinal of the photopigment, conformational change of photopigment, activation of transducin, G protein, activation of phosphodiesterase. It decreases the cyclic GMP. Then there is closure of sodium channel. Then there is hyperpolarization, decreased release of glutamate or synaptic transmitter, and then response in bipolar cell and other neural elements. In this way, there is generation of impulses by the striking of the light. ल यहाँसम्म केही नबुझेको छ भने सोध्ने. आजलाई हामी यहीसम्म गर्छौं. केही छ नबुझेको? एउटा कुरा के बुझ्नु पर्यो भन्दाखेरि अरु सबै ठाउँमा हामी एक्सन पोटेन्शियल जेनेरेट हुन्छ भन्छौं हो. For the generation of impulse, there is the process of depolarization. Depolarization भएपछि चाहिँ there is generation of impulse. But यो आँखामा चाहिँ के हुन्छ भन्दाखेरि impulse generate हुनको लागि there is hyperpolarizing potential rather than depolarizing potential. ल. Any question? Any question? केही नबुझेको छ?
No, ma'am.
सबै बुझेछ? बुझे छैन?
बुझेछ म्याम.
बुझेछ कि छैन? ल आजलाई हामी यति गरौँ त?
हस् म्याम.